Joining us now, Jeff Paterson, one half of the rink-wide duo, took in the game last night. Rick Tocchet is on the board. Jeff, he got a rough reception, but he's got a victory as head coach of the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah, and he's got the Chicago Blackhawks to thank for it. They are brutal. They are dreadful. I know they had won a few coming in, but they had also won 2 of 23 at one stretch there between mid-November and January, and I have to imagine a lot of those games looked like last night. Guys, they had 5 shots on goal at even strength. 44 minutes of the game was played at evens, and they had 5 shots on goal. They were outshot 37-5 by the Canucks at 5-on-5. So, and look, they came into the night the lowest scoring team in the NHL, and then their leading scorer checks out for 17 minutes after the fight as well. Like, it's bad all around. So people that think that the bottom could fall out on the Vancouver Canucks, that's your competition right there. The Chicago Blackhawks, who are going to move off probably Kane and Taves and Domi and others. It's going to get worse for the Blackhawks. So that's where the bar is. But let's move on from the Blackhawks. And, yeah, I mean, the Canucks limited the Hawks to 14 shots on the night. Hey, the penalty kill went 3 for 3 and scored a shorthanded goal. So maybe it is a new era in Canucks hockey. I think it's a tough game to evaluate. I would imagine Rick Tocchet thinks it's a tough game to evaluate, especially since they jumped on a plane and they're right back at it 24 hours later. So I don't know how much time they're going to spend evaluating a 5-2 win over the Chicago Blackhawks. And saying all of that, the Canucks had to sweat. I mean, they're down 1-0 and 2-1. It's 2-2. Into the third period, the Hawks had that 2-on-1. If they convert there, go up 3-2, who knows? But that was the turning point because the Hawks didn't score, and then at the other end, Dakota Joshua did. So some depth scoring from the Canucks. There was a little bit of spirit, and ultimately, anybody that takes a coaching job, you want to get the first win, you want to get the second and the third as well, but you can only accomplish the first one on night number 1. So I think if you're Rick Tocchet, you're satisfied, certainly, but know full well, and I'm sure he does, it will get tougher. There are better teams out there than the Chicago Blackhawks.
Oh, I was texting with some friends in Chicago saying, remember when these games used to matter? Remember when, like, the NHL would stop when the Blackhawks and the Canucks played?
Kane celebrated like it mattered when he scored. Yeah.
And you're quite right, Jeff. Like, that is the derby if you're trying to get to the bottom, and you likely won't because they're getting worse. And, of course, Anaheim is getting worse, too. A lot of these teams are going to get worse. What did you notice about Tocchet as a tactician, as an in-game strategist? What did you notice about how he ran the bench and deployed the players last night that would have been different than Bruce?
Yeah, again, it was one night. They lost Will Lockwood late in the second period, so they were down a forward for the third. That complicates matters when you're trying to read into strategy because it looked like he had the blender out, but he was sort of forced to have the blender out. And part of that was Dakota Joshua got a chance to play with Brock Besser and Bo Horvat, and then he scored. And so I won't be surprised if they stick with that line combination and see if there isn't a little bit more there. Look, it had been really quiet for Dakota Joshua for far too long, 19 games without a goal. And it is kind of funny. The last time he scored twice and dropped the gloves and got into a scrap in San Jose. He's better when there's a bit of an edge to his game. He's a big guy. He's one of their biggest forwards. They need him to play with a little bit of snarl. So, there's a guy I think that can benefit from the coaching change. I thought the penalty kill, and again, it went 3 for 3 against a Blackhawks team that didn't show a whole lot of fight on the night, but I did think the Canucks were a little more aggressive. I thought maybe that was sort of a subtle nuance on the penalty kill. They seemed to pressure the puck more than a Bruce Boudreau coach team had done, certainly towards the end. And look, any change in tactic is probably a good change in tactic when it comes to the Canucks penalty kill where it is. So baby steps there in the right direction. Otherwise, in terms of structure, I think that word gets thrown around so much. I need to see them. I think it'll be a better judge of, the way Rick Tocchet wants them to play going up against a team with some depth and some balance like the Seattle Kraken as opposed to the Chicago Blackhawks.
I do see in sports all the time coaches establish early teachers' pets, if you will, because they want to try to do something differently. I think whether it's conscious or subconscious, coaches want to be a little bit different, try to uncover something that the previous guy didn't. And you mentioned Dakota Joshua. He's certainly up there in the teacher's pet power rankings. But I think Sheldon Dries ultimately finished with a better second half of that game. And he probably did himself a ton of favors in terms of ice time going forward.
Yeah, going through the legs to score, too.
Yeah.
Getting a little cheeky Look, Sheldon Dries has 6 goals and 10 points in 28 games. Like, he's not going to play all 81 because he's been in and out of the lineup and up and down, but, 6 goals in 28 basically puts you on a 18 to 20 goal pace over the course of a full season. It's hard to argue with that. And he has been one of the guys lower in the lineup that has been somewhat productive. Joshua's up to 7 goals now, Dries at 6. We know that there are others out there. Curtis Lazar, I'm not sure he had the early chance and didn't do anything with it, and I'm not convinced that he'll score again this season. He scored in the 3rd game of the season in Washington when he was playing on a line, by the way, with Paterson and Kuzmenko that night. So as a true grinder, it has been a grind for Curtis Lazar. But, for a guy like Sheldon Dries, again, they moved him to the wing, and he had primarily been a center under Bruce Boudreau, and so that was something that was a little bit different. And I suppose, just back to the question about differences, I know there were people making a fair bit after 2 periods of, look at Elias Pettersson's ice time, like it's not even close to Bo Horvat. And I think Tocchet did play the matchup game last night. He had Horvat's line and Miller's line taking on whatever offensive threats the Blackhawks offer. McCain and Taves are split up, but that allowed Elias Pettersson to see the 3rd line of the Blackhawks, and he scored twice at even strength. I know they gave up the goal. They were on the ice for the Sam Lafferty goal, which was just brutal.
A bad goal.
Yeah. So we're not holding the players at fault. That's one that a goaltender at this level has to stop. But, was there a method to the madness? Yeah, I think Rick Tocchet wanted, and he said at his introductory press conference, he wanted to find mismatches for his best players. I think he did that. Now, you can do that against the Blackhawks. It will be tougher out on the road. He won't have last change. Can't dictate the matchup. So let's see what it looks like in Seattle. But then they're back home on Friday, and then everybody around the organization can exhale because they have the week off after that. So, I think we're all sort of with a fine-tooth comb trying to figure out what was different. Those were a few of the things. But the Paterson matchup was interesting, and no surprise, it paid off.
By the way, those 6 and 7 goals for Dries and Joshua suspiciously close to the likes of a Garland at 8, Besser at 9. With a lot fewer minutes, with a lot less opportunity, it doesn't look good if those guys can catch up to 2 guys that were supposed to be in top 6 scoring positions the rest of the year. So we'll see how that goes if they do indeed get some more opportunity.
Yeah, and you're right. Like, that's something certainly to monitor here. And that's where I come back to Dakota Joshua. Just at his size, he can't be as quiet, as invisible. If he wants to be an everyday National Hockey Leaguer, and the blueprint is there. And I thought he and his line, to be fair, I thought Lazar and Lockwood against the Oilers the other night, they did play with a little bit of an edge. They're, bumping the goaltender and after the whistle and all that kind of stuff. That's periphery stuff. I get it. But when you're in that role, you have to have some sort of physical presence. You do. It's still a contact sport. There is intimidation. There is aggression. It's all allowed. And the Canucks haven't been a team necessarily that intimidates the opponents. And that's why, to me, one of the craziest things about this season, guys, is 2 more last night. The Canucks lead the NHL in fighting majors with 23. And at the outset of the season, if you'd asked me, was the season going to go sideways? Would the coach get fired? I would have said, I hope not. I find that hard to believe. If you had told me the Canucks were going to lead the league in fighting majors, I would have told you were nuts. And here we are, 23 in 47 games.
It's astonishing, Jeff, and you hit it. I would have been the league has changed, needless to say. And the other thing is, I think you might see more fighting majors here as guys try and catch the eye of Rick Tocchet, Adam Foote, and Sergei Gonchar. Just before we move on to Andrei Kuzmenko, another jersey hits the ice last night. Now, this is obviously not a protest against Tocchet or the game. It was the first 5 minutes. I suspect it was a protest against what happened this past weekend with Boudreau. 3 on opening night, 1 during the Winnipeg game, 1 last night. I believe there's another game. Like, do you know how many jerseys have hit the ice, Jeff? Are we talking like 6 or 7 jerseys that have hit the ice in 3 or 4 games?
Well, you just laid it out there. I had lost track. I'm a little bit numb to it, quite frankly. And the early game jersey drop was interesting. Weird. That was a novelty, I suppose. I kind of joked on Twitter that the guy was just getting rid of old blue inventory.
That's right.
To get in on the free the skate movement. He was actually, it was going to be good for the club because he would go to the souvenir store and buy a new black one. He was just getting rid of. He wasn't sure what to do with it. But you're right. I mean, certainly not at Tocchet. I think more somebody just voting about the events of the the past week and the state of the franchise. And yes, the organization has turned the page after the coaching change, but we can't forget, and we won't forget, obviously, what has happened here for much of this season, but particularly the events of the last 7 days leading to the embarrassing weekend for the organization with finally the dismissal of the head coach.
I normally reserve this question for Rob Williams, but they're practicing in skate jerseys now too. Does that tell you that this is going to be a permanent fix here? That are we seeing the last of the blue and green here this season, do you think?
I've wondered that. I know that they laid out, is it the 8 or 10 games that they're going to wear them the rest of the way, which is essentially half of the remaining home games. We should mention, too, that after last night, there's only 6 home games now between now and the trade deadline. So everyone that goes off the board, for guys like Horvat and Luke Shen and others, the time
final moments
is ticking. But yeah, I mean, I do wonder the big promotional campaign, they actually spent some budget on the whole free the skate thing. The reaction,
and you wouldn't change your practice jerseys. You don't change your practice jerseys for your third uniform, generally speaking. But yeah, I mean, we'll see.
Yeah, well, I suppose so. I mean, you're right with the Lunar New Year and the red warm up. Like, it's just there's been a lot of jersey colors and talk and everything else. Although they do those theme nights up right. They did it again with that the rabbit logo looked terrific. I thought the red practice jerseys. So, I don't know, but I certainly wouldn't rule that out.
Kuzmenko and the Bodog poll question. Do the Canucks need to re-sign Kuzmenko, Jeff, for the sake of Elias Paterson?
One of my projects here, and it may not happen because it's a game day, and he may score again, but you know how on like golf telecast now, over the course of a weekend, they'll tell you cumulatively how many feet of putts a guy has made in a tournament? Yes. I want to go back game by game because NHL game sheets show you the position on the ice. I want to know total footage of goals for Andrei Kuzmenko, who's up to 21 on the season, and I would bet it's under 40. There have been a couple from distance, but, I mean, his gift has been this ability to get to the inside with his stick on the ice, knowing that he's playing with good players, whether it's on a power play or evens. And that second goal last night, guys, was cool because Paterson makes the cutback move, and at the same time, Kuzmenko's reading that to get to the inside of Jake McCabe, and then the pass is delivered where he's expecting it, and it just speaks to the chemistry that those two guys have forged.
And he's got pace there, too. He's doing it with speed. He's not parked at the side of the net, which is still a skill play, but I like the fact he's doing it with pace and making that timing work.
He's a darter, and he has found the soft spots, and it's a skill. Like, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it and scoring goals. So, it's not what I expected when I knew that he had agreed to come and play for the Canucks. I was expecting, some playmaking. I saw the shot at Whistler at training camp and thought this guy's going to score some goals from distance, but it's remarkable the number, and like I say, tap-ins, but again, that makes it sound like he's not doing, his part in all of that. So, it is fascinating, guys. I go back and forth on what to do with this guy. I guess in my mind right now, I would dangle him and ask for a first rounder. And if there's a team that's willing to jump, then I think you have no choice. But if you can get a first round pick in a deep draft, a second first rounder, for a guy that's played 40 games for you, I think you have to move off him. But there's also the broader, bigger picture of what is the vision they're going to sell to Elias Paterson as they strip this thing down? And he needs somebody to play with and somebody that complements his game. And Kuzmenko has done all of that. And it sounds like they, built a friendship off the ice as well. So it's fascinating to me because on one hand, you might be able to rook somebody for a first round pick in a good draft. And yet at the same time, you've got to come up with some sort of plan to convince your best player to buy in and be here long term. And so that's why I say I go back and forth on this all the time.
So do I, Jeff. And of course, it's complicated by all the matters that you bring up, but it's also complicated by the fact that the agent seems to be insistent on a bridge deal. He's telling that to Donnie and Dolly again today. So if you're only going to get him for a couple of years, if the Canucks were self-aware, they would know we're not going to be contending in that period of time. And so do we really need to spend a lot more money on yet another winger? But of course, given how the Canucks view themselves and given how quickly Rutherford thinks he can turn this around, that might be a term that they're comfortable with. I've long said, If he's willing to go 4 years, then that's something that I would really think about. But 1, 2, 3 years, I'm not necessarily sure you're going to be in a competitive window there, much to their disagreement, because I suspect they probably do think they can compete with Kuzmenko in the next couple of years.
Right, and so many moving parts here, and fascinating, too, with the prospects game in town. There were at least 5, by my count, NHL general managers in attendance watching him do his thing, and I would think for a few of them, probably the first time that they've actually seen him with their own 2 eyes, and he steps up and he scores, 2 Kuzmenko goals, and so that was just an interesting dynamic to all of the events. But the other one is, like, you're right. If he and his camp want to go bridge deal, then they're looking to set themselves up and just, like, I know he's new to the National Hockey League, but a 2-year bridge deal takes him close to 30 years old. Of course, coming out of that, then he's going to be looking to hit the home run. And yeah, the cap is supposed to go up, but what if he continues to score? What if they keep him here on a bridge deal and he continues to produce with Paterson? Then all of a sudden, like, what's that next contract? And now we're getting way ahead of ourselves here, but that's the danger. Whereas if you could, and I'm not saying you can't, I don't know what the market is, but if he continues to score and the fact that he's on his ELC and is attractive to so many teams, if you could get a first rounder, even a late first rounder in a draft like this one, then in theory, the hope would be that that player in a couple of years would be able to jump on board and score you some of the goals that Andrei Kuzmenko is likely to continue to score.
For a much cheaper price.
No,
cross-controlled and at a cheaper price. So, I mean, again, these are all the factors. There are a ton of them. I don't know. Hey, look, if the worst thing is that they can't trade him and he does resign here, they're keeping a player that seems to want to be here, that, the fans have embraced, obviously has lived up to the billing. Guys, he's got 21 goals. I think at the outset of the season, like, I thought 25 would be absolute gravy for this group. And at the midway mark, he's already at 21 and really not showing much sign of slowing down. Nope. The one thing that's interesting to me is his splits, and he's not the only guy in the NHL, but 14 of his 21 on home ice and just 7 out on the road. And not that he hasn't been productive. He's picked up points on the road, but he has 1 goal, I think, in the last 9 road games. And as they continue out here and play good teams, right after the All-Star break, they're out on the road in the New York area. They're going to face a bunch of good teams there. These are things I think teams that are doing their homework would be looking at the very least. But if he continues to play with Paterson, maybe that's just a quirk that he's bound to get some on the road as well as the ones he's getting at home.
20 power play points for Kuzmenko. 0 power play goals for Elias Pettersson.
It's stunning. It's stunning.
Are they doing it wrong there? Like,
they are. Yes, they are.
Has the league just made it impossible for Elias to get the shot? What's going on there?
Well, teams certainly cheat to his side. There's no doubt.
Yeah,
but he is too skilled and means too much to this Canucks offense that now this is no longer, isn't that kind of cute? He doesn't have a power play goal. He thought he had scored 2 of them, and Kuzmenko in Vegas and Horvat in Florida after the fact that they were changed. The one-timer is still elite. We know that. But we also know that there aren't that many goals scored from great distance in the National Hockey League. I want to see him get closer to the net. Look, Quinn Hughes, same thing. He wasn't going to score from distance. He attacked the net last week, and he scored a power play goal. I want to see them move Paterson around. It doesn't have to be JT Miller over on that left side running the power play. I mean, Paterson can shoot the puck every bit as well, if not more so, than JT Miller, and not just a one-timer. I mean, the wrist shot is, we've seen that. So move him around, keep teams guessing and trying to find him, but get him closer to the net. Because I think at this stage, with no power play goals, they are doing it wrong. And their power play has dropped, guys. Like, it's now middle of the pack. It went 0 for 5 last night against the sad sack Blackhawks. They should have been able to put that game away. They started the night with 6 minutes of power play time in the first 5 minutes of the hockey game. Like, it should have been 2 or 3-0 for the Canucks early on, and it wasn't. And this power play seems to have sort of settled in. I think teams have figured them out. Hughes isn't much of a threat to score. Paterson over on the one-timer spot hasn't scored yet. And so teams have kind of collapsed around Horvat in the bumper spot. Bo hasn't scored a lot on the power play in the new year as well. So variety is the spice of life, and they kept Jason King on. But he's going to have to, show his coaching chops here. I think go back to the drawing board a little bit. I would move Elias Pettersson around, and I'd like to see him get a little closer to the net.
Spot on, Jeff. Statistically, it is an anomaly. You couldn't imagine getting 19 goals, 56 points without a power play marker. And as for Kuzmenko, you'll see if he hits the rookie wall, right? Like he's going to be asked to playing a lot of games here, more so than accustomed over in Europe. We'll see how he does then. And who knows? Maybe he's not a Vancouver Canuck when he hits the rookie wall. Thanks for this, my friend. We'll catch up tomorrow.
Yeah. All right.